Earl and Starla Want All the Fishy Treats. Written by Mike Raymer. Pictures by Ashley Byard. Earl and Starla want all the fishy treats. My name is Elizabeth, and I am a second grader at Gord Downey Elementary School. I race home from school each day to see my cats and to finish all of my chores before dinner. Feeding my cats is the only chore I really don't mind because I know how happy my two fluff balls are when I give them fishy treats. This is Earl, my boy cat. He spends a lot of his time following my dad around the house and watching the birds, squirrels, and chipmunks who live in our backyard. He's a huge fan of having his belly rubbed. This is Starla, my girl cat. She spends a lot of her time following my mom around the house and playing with the orange string that used to be in my brother's favorite hoodie. She's the greatest nap taker in the entire world. Whenever Earl and Starla hear me shake the fishy treats bag, they come racing into the kitchen like they're a couple of cheetahs chasing zebras through the grasslands of Africa. I'm first! Fishy treats, fishy treats, fishy treats! Last Tuesday, I pulled out the fishy treats bag and discovered it was almost empty. I immediately realized this was going to be a gigantic problem because Earl and Starla can both eat a lot of those things. One time, they ripped open a new bag of fishy treats and devoured each morsel in about 10 seconds. Now, we have to keep the fishy treats locked up in an old cast iron safe my dad bought at a flea market last year. After discovering there were only a handful of fishy treats left in the bag, I asked Earl and Starla how many they each wanted. I want infinity times 10. I want infinity times infinity. When I told them there were only 8 treats left in the bag, they both wailed loudly enough for everyone in the neighborhood to hear their pitiful howls. Help, I'm starving. I shall faint from this hunger. I knew Earl and Starla's unlimited wants for fishy treats were greater than the number of fishy treats in the bag. I also knew we were going to have to figure out how to allocate the treats in a way that would satisfy both cats. Luckily, I had just learned about scarcity and ways to allocate goods and services in Mr. George's class. Scarcity, when our unlimited wants are greater than limited resources. Because of scarcity, we have to decide how we're going to allocate or give out goods produced with limited resources. Ways to allocate: force, majority rule, price, contest, first come, first served, lottery, personal characteristics, authority, sharing. I asked Earl and Starla for suggestions on how to allocate the fishy treats. The next thing I knew, Earl snatched his bandit hat from its secret bandit hat location. He quickly yanked it over his ears, eyes, and snout, bumped Starla out of the way, and snatched the fishy treats. I told Earl he couldn't take all the fishy treats for himself by using force because that would mean Starla wouldn't get any. Starla didn't want to use force to decide who would get the treats, so I said, how about we use majority rule to decide who will get them? Each of you has 1 vote, and whoever gets the most votes gets the treats. Both cats dashed out of the room and came bounding back in holding signs. Not surprisingly, they voted for themselves. Majority rule didn't work to decide who would get the fishy treats because the voting ended in a tie. So I said, how about we use price to decide who will get them? I informed Earl and Starla that each treat would cost $1. They quickly reminded me they had no money because they'd spent it all the week before on fancy hats. Very fancy hats. The cats weren't happy using price to decide who would get the treats, so I said, how about we have a contest to decide who will get them? I suggested a tail wrestling contest, and before I knew it, they were dressed in their wrestling outfits and ready to tangle. Things did not go well. Fur flew, whiskers were bent. The cats weren't happy using the contest to decide who would get the treat, so I said, how about we try first come, first served to decide who will get them? Since Starla was first to her dish this morning, she should get the treats. Earl wasn't happy trying first come, first served to decide who would get the treats, so I said, how about we use a lottery to decide who will get them? They both blurted out, yes! So I pulled their names in Earl's fancy hat. We drew a name and Earl. Starla bellowed, no! Starla wasn't happy using a lottery to decide who would get the treats, so I said, how about we use personal characteristics to decide who will get them? We could give the treats to the tallest cat, or the cat with the longest tail, or the cat with the most coat colors, or maybe the cat who is the best nap taker. The cats weren't happy using personal characteristics to decide who would get the treats, so I said, how about we use authority to decide who will get them? Earl and Starla both agreed and told me to pick who should get the treats. As hard as I tried, I simply could not choose one cat over the other because they're both my favorites. You're my favorite, Earl. You're my favorite, Starla. At that moment, I remembered the one allocation strategy that just might solve the problem of not having enough fishy treats to satisfy Earl and Starla's unlimited wants. Sharing. I said, let's share the remaining fishy treats. Of all the allocation strategies, sharing seemed to work best this time. Earl and Starla both purred when they saw me plunk treats in their dish. As for me, I was really happy the bag held an equal number of treats to allocate. Having an odd number of fishy treats would have made the job much more difficult. The next day at school, I told Mr. George how I used the allocation strategies to solve a real scarcity problem. He smiled the biggest smile I've ever seen him smile, and he asked me to share my story with my classmates. I was almost out of fishy treats, so I had to figure out how to allocate what was left in the bag. First, Earl tried using force, then we tried using majority rule, then we tried price, then we had a contest, then we used first come, first served, then we had a lottery, then we used personal characteristics, then I was the authority, but I couldn't choose between Earl and Starla, and then we used sharing, and that worked. When I finished, Mr. George told the class he was giving me the Awesome Possum Award for my outstanding presentation and for remembering all the different ways you can allocate goods and services. My friend Jalen reminded the class that Mr. George deciding to give me the award was an example of an authority allocating a scarce good. This made Mr. George smile that smile again. I dashed home from school that afternoon because I couldn't wait to show Earl and Starla the Awesome Possum Award. We leapt onto our favorite couch and I told them all about my school presentation. I could tell by the look in their eyes they thought the plushy possum was for them. At that moment, I saw Earl reaching for his trusty bandit hat again. We are not going to use force to decide who gets to play with the possum first, I exclaimed. We sat quietly for a few seconds, and then Starla smiled and whispered in my ear, "Can we please go over the list of allocation strategies again? I loved learning about them." So that's exactly what we did. Ways to allocate: force, contest, majority rule, first come, first served, lottery, price, personal characteristics, authority, sharing. Glossary. The end.